with the whole COVID thing and the fear of mingling in offices, etc. So anyway, apparently this guy had access to this data for these Zoom meetings, which would mean participants, contact information, probably financial records for the people who are paying for it, who attended meetings, how long, who hosted them, etc., 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 was providing this data to the Chinese government. Now, I know this is very peripheral to what we're talking about with this the Olympics, but it kind of touches on it because of, first of all, I can't let the occasion pass without asking, what exactly is it that the Chinese hope to obtain, to glean from this data? Okay, I just don't know. So, but they're willing to pay for it, right? And they must be willing to pay big money because people are risking going to jail in order to get it to them. But it does beg the question, I think, why is a country like China, or, and I mean like China, there are bad countries out there, why do they get to be full participants in the Olympics and then we have all of the problems with the Russians cheating? And I'm not excusing their behavior. I think it's abominable. But, at least they don't have concentration camps anymore, like what they're building in China. And even at the height of the Soviet Union, one wonders why the Soviets were so welcome in the Olympics, given the human rights abuses that they were involved in. I think it has to do a little bit with the ethos of the Olympics. It's supposed to be a non-partisan, non-political event, simply athletes, okay? All right, fair enough. But then we just circle back to the original question that we had, and that is this a real, if that's the point, if the whole point is competition, fair competition, if that's at the heart and soul of what the Olympics is, not politics, I can accept that, but I can't understand then why they would let the Russians off so easy. Basically what they're saying is, well, we're gonna punish the Russian, the Russian government, like Russia, the country, but why should we hold any of the athletes who were participants in this accountable or sanction them or penalize them for something that maybe they weren't involved with 2 or 3 years ago? That's a fair question, of course, but the answer to that question is, well, okay, well then fine, let's not do it. Let's if an athlete got caught using performance enhancing drugs, ban them from the next competition or ban them for life from Olympic competition. If that's what you want to do. But it just seems to me that this measure that they've taken is ridiculous and frankly non-consequential.
Well, you're quite right about that, and it's frustrating because if it wants to be above politics, they sure are doing a good job of making people think it's all about politics. I mean, come on, really? Are you serious? Above politics? There isn't an organization on the planet that isn't involved in politics in some way. I don't mean, presidential politics or things like that. I'm not talking about governance. But politics means a lot of things. And when you allow people to influence the way an organization is run to the detriment of that organization, you're engaged in some level with politics. Because you're trying to change negatively, or to your benefit, maybe would be a better way to put it, the outcome of some of these situations. And I think this is part of what we have to ask ourselves is, on top of the human rights violations, on top of all these other things that are going on, why are we allowing countries like that to try to manipulate outcomes? Like, why was the appeal allowed in the first place? If you're caught cheating at the Olympics, they're pretty sure that you were cheating. And since countries, you know what I think it goes to, Joseph, and I'm talking in circles, and perhaps I shouldn't. I should really. My gut feeling about this is that it's about prestige, it's about national pride. Like they're saying well, if we punish these guys this way, it's really going to hurt them at home, and it's going to hurt their national pride, and they won't want to play nice with us later on. Well, you know what? If you're worried about your national pride, don't behave in ways that would reflect badly on you if you're discovered. I mean, it's the same old story. If you don't want to get caught, you don't want to go through the embarrassment of standing before the judge and telling him why you did X, Y, or Z, then don't do it. The answer is personal responsibility. And these states just aren't taking it. So I think that might be part of it, at least.
Well, when you're talking about the appeal, Nick, I think it's important to know that the appeal was not the government of Russia or the Athletic Association in Russia appealing the decision that the athletes were in fact involved in doping. No, what they were appealing was the punishment on the grounds that it was too harsh. You're not going to let us play our national anthem for 4 years or raise our flag. That's too harsh. Okay, we have to appeal it. And the committee that heard the appeal agreed and cut it in half. Nothing to do with the athletes being banned or punished or anything like that. So, but here's the other thing, and I think there's a certain element of irony here when you get right down to it. And that's because, Nick, everybody knows that the International Olympic Committee is one of the most corrupt organizations in the world. And the process whereby the Olympics are awarded to one country or another, or to one city or another, you asked, how does a country like China get the Olympics? Well, through things like bribery, direct bribery, payoffs, providing, services under the table, wining and dining. I mean, you name it. This goes on, and there's been a lot of this that was uncovered in the last number of years, maybe not the last year or two, but before. And then forget about how you actually award the Olympics to one city or another. Within the Olympics itself, there were plenty of cases where judges were cheating in favor of one contestant or another, or one country or another. I mean, so here's a question. If a Russian judge, and to be fair, I'm not suggesting that this actually happened with a Russian judge, but if a Russian judge was caught, or it was determined, for instance, in figure skating or anything where the judge has to make a mark based on how much difficulty was involved in this particular performance, how much grace was it?
Arbitrary thing,
very arbitrary,
not a point system.
Well, they assign points. They give them points. Okay, so but it's not like who came in first in the race,
right?
So or who scored the most goals in a hockey game. So there have been cases where judges have been known to inflate the score of one of the athletes over another athlete, and push them ahead. Now, if a Russian judge had done that, would the punishment to Russia have been the same? And would the committee that heard this appeal have made the decision to uphold the appeal, agree, and reduce the sentence? To the degree, of course, that you could call this a sentence. So these are open questions. And the Olympics, Nick, the Olympics today, the modern time Olympics, is humongous business. It's not just big business. It's astronomically big business. You're talking billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure building, investments.
Oh yes, it's big business, no doubt about that.
When you were talking about Beijing getting the Olympics a few years back, you were talking about how they shut the city down for 2 weeks just so that they could get rid of the air pollution. Even before that, they were evicting people, kicking them out of their houses and demolishing their houses in order to make room for these world-class stadiums for the athletes and all of the revenue and everything. And what exactly is it that the Olympics stand for when you can kick a person out of their house and demolish their house so that you can build a stadium to use for 2 weeks, period? Not 2 weeks out of the year, 2 weeks ever. I mean, look at the Taj Mahal that we built, or the whatever you want to call it, in Montreal, Olympic Stadium, which has been sitting not being used for how long now? The Big O, or as we used to call it, the Big Zero.
Ever since the Expos left.
Sure. So
the tragedy of that is, I was just going to say, the tragedy of that is the whole point of the games is to be something that all of us can enjoy, regardless of rank or place in society. It's supposed to be the one thing that brings us all together. And yet, at the same time, with that said, you have a situation where bring us all together. Yeah, as long as your house isn't on the block we want to build a stadium on. In other words, it's doing nothing of the kind. It's busy tearing down in order to have this facade. And that's the part that's so hard to handle. Like, the idea that China would get the Olympics, I find anathema. It's just, how could you possibly give them that with everything being equal? Even if there was no concentration camps, even if there are no other human, if you have to bulldoze major sections of your city and shut down a city, I don't know how many people live in Beijing, let's say 5 or 6 million, probably a lot more than that, knowing China. If you have to shut down basically the economy of that city in order to have a 10-day event, that might overlap into 2 weeks, I'm sorry, it's just not that there's the Olympics. That's not what it's about, or at least that's not what it's supposed to be about. And yet, you're right, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. Look at the everything from construction companies to architects to hotels and the quote-unquote hospitality industry that goes along with it, and it's all gone 2 weeks later.
And I can pretty much guarantee you, Nick, that those people whose homes were expropriated by the Chinese government in order to build their Olympic facilities, I'm willing to bet that they didn't get fair market compensation for their properties. Something tells me, just in the back of my mind,
I don't
didn't
think
happen in communist China. Anyway,
I just can't see that happen.
I can't see it happening anyway. Okay, we're coming to the bottom of the hour. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to us live, stay with us. We're going to take a bit of a break. If you're listening to the podcast, we will catch you in part 2 tomorrow morning. So you can stick with us, but you get to have a 24-hour break, or whatever amount of time there is between you listening to part 1 or part 2 of episode 138 of the Nick and Joe Show. We will be back on ThinkRadio.ca in just a few minutes.